To have some more coffee, I need the can, or pots homemade and otherwise. The best container for potted plants is the old standard red clay pot. Its tapered design permits good drainage, and the porous surface leaves the soil well aerated, but it's by no means the only possible pot. Early in the game, I spotted, lined up like tin soldiers against the wall at the back of a kitchen shelf, the empty coffee cans Susan was saving for cookie overflows. With a screwdriver, I punched 3 small drainage holes in the bottom of each. I briefly considered painting them with the flat rubber-based paint left over from decorating our apartment, but rejected that medium as showing dirt much too readily. Instead, I settled on a coat of enamel in subdued colors so my pots wouldn't outshine the plants themselves, applied carefully to keep any paint which is toxic from tainting the inside surface. Besides being inexpensive, these adopted pots had an added advantage when plants were ready for transplanting to larger containers. All I had to do was lay a canned plant carefully on its side and remove the rusted bottom with a can opener. This required only a slight struggle. After loosening the soil from the sides with a knife, it was a simple matter to push soil and roots out in one lump ready for repotting. Milk cartons, cut down to about a third their height, make excellent starting boxes, again so long as good drainage holes are provided. They have the twin advantages of being always available and disposable. When a seedling is ready for transplanting, the sides of the milk carton are merely cut away with scissors or knife, leaving the seedling undisturbed in its clump of soil. It was while visiting country cousins, however, that I discovered at their local gardening center what must surely be the ultimate in starting pots. Coming in all sizes and shapes, they are molded of compressed fiber and peat. Once seedlings have sprouted and grown to a height 3 or 4 times the diameter of the pot, this rule of thumb is easily observable, as the plant will simply begin to look too big for its pot. Transplanting is only a matter of burying the entire container in a larger one, always making sure to keep the soil level same. After some time, the fiber pot dissolves, leaving a rich, loamy soil additive. Voila! Instant transplants with no muss, no fuss, no bother, as they say. Besides, much to Susan's relief, this method doesn't leave half an inch of mud at the bottom of the kitchen sink where I normally work. There are other ways in which I can still wreak havoc with the kitchen, of course. It remains, in fact, my general store for most planting supplies. The previously mentioned juice can lids, for instance. Not only are they ideal for screening the drainage holes in the bottom of a pot, but since they rust, they tend to replenish some of the minerals in the soil used up by a plant as it grows. The little lids are excellent stoppers, even without a layer of gravel over them if the latter is not available to help stem the flow of water through the pot to the dish beneath. That dish beneath is something not to be forgotten. There are to this day 3 perfectly circular watermarks on my desktop from the 2 mangoes and pineapple I started after the lemon tree. Discarded aluminum pie pans of the standard kitchen or the frozen store-bought pie variety serve well as saucers for the larger pots. A knife from the table setting early became an indispensable all-around tool for repotting, trimming dead leaves, and pruning, though for the latter task, scissors are sometimes better, and any old fork I soon found, except maybe the desert kind, will make an excellent miniature pitchfork and rake for turning and loosening soil that has settled, or for burying plant vitamin pills. My raids on the kitchen, while not unnoticed, were less disastrous than some of my forays farther afield for gardening supplies. When one day, having not even finished Susan's extra-rich homemade pecan pie, I brought home from the supermarket a frozen cheesecake, I thought I was about to bring down a shower of insulted tears. Even after my explanation that I had bought it only for the large, deep aluminum pan in which it came, she did not appear fully convinced. During the course of the day, therefore, I ate the entire cheesecake, followed by the pecan pie, before filling the dish with even rows of papaya, pomegranate, and banana seeds. Covering the dish with saran wrap, I completed my first miniature greenhouse, retiring to bed with a contented smile and an extreme case of indigestion. Since then, I have more or less refrained from any attempt to conform the family menu to my horticultural requirements, for the most part contenting myself with supplying an occasional dietary supplement of newly discovered tropical fruit. My first greenhouse was soon superseded by a vastly improved version. I had discovered the existence of cake pans with clear plastic snap-on covers. A large loaf pan makes an ideal miniature pothouse for germinating a good selection of seeds, particularly the smaller variety such as pomegranate, grape, or papaya. The first thing to do, I learned the hard way, is to make certain the pan is made of aluminum. I started with one that looked like aluminum but turned out to be tin-clad steel. It began to rust within a few days, not only making a mess but through rotting of the water, killing all the seedlings. Glass or Pyrex, I reflected, would be ideal except for the fact that being transparent, they let in too much light, and the opaque kind came only in small sizes at the local hardware store. I reverted to aluminum. Covering the bottom of the pan with 4 or 5 single layers of cheesecloth, I added tepid water until the cloth was solidly moist and drained off the excess. I laid out the seeds in even rows, carefully leaving room between different species so that no confusion would occur after growth hopefully began. To be doubly certain, on the cover I scotch-taped labels indicating what type of plants were to sprout beneath and the date they were planted. The clear plastic top of this type of pan allows easy seed watching, at the same time keeping the water from evaporating by letting the condensation drop back into the tin. However, the plastic should be covered with a sheet of paper to darken the very interior of the pan, since most seeds germinate best in semi-darkness. The cover itself should not be removed until the seedlings are ready for transplanting. Sealing off the seeds in a miniature greenhouse considerably lessens the ever-present risk of mold attacking seeds. However, if a serious mold growth developed, it's best to simply dispose of the whole greenhouse, lock stock and barrel, as the thousands of mold spores liberated from even a small growth are almost impossible to combat. Lately, I have been using individual little hothouses made from emptied condiment containers. I line them with moist cheesecloth just like their bigger counterparts, but I keep a separate container for each type of seed. This has eliminated any chance of confusion that might arise when there are several similar seeds sprouting under the same lid. The one thing to remember is to check the seeds with fair regularity. I once forgot about the germinating loquat until it forced the lid off the container by itself. At that point, its roots were so tangled in a cheesecloth I had to plant the whole thing, cheesecloth and all. That particular loquat has always remained stunted. I don't think it ever got over the Herculean effort of sprouting its way out from under a plastic rock. In their enclosed environment without soil, germinating seeds draw nourishment from within until the taproot, the first main root, emerges from the splitting seed, followed by the first leaves. Once the taproot has developed and the seed leaves begin to sprout up, a seedling may be transferred to a pot of its own. I usually have ready for it one of my smaller homemade ones and bury it gently in a hole poked deep enough to accommodate the root without crowding and to leave the incipient seed leaves just even with the soil line. A transplanted seedling needs profuse watering at once so the soil will settle evenly around the root before it has a chance to dry out. As a plant continues to grow, eventually it has to be transferred again. When its plant begins to look too big for its first homemade pot, I transplant it to a large-sized commercial one where it can feel comfortably at home for a year or more. Most of my plants are now in the standard red terracotta pots. I don't use their painted counterparts because enamel eliminates the porous quality of the terracotta, which is the advantage of commercial containers in the first place. An additional one being, of course, that one doesn't have to eat the dessert they came with. Even the largest clay pot, however, was at last unable to support Arthur, my first avocado tree, which shot up to well over 7 feet and spread out almost 5. For him, I found an attractive redwood tub held together with brass hoops. The one problem this presented, besides that of space, arose from the necessity of turning him around occasionally so the side away from the window would get some light. When an indoor avocado tree of this size is in one of its peak growing periods, the pot has to be turned 180 degrees at least twice a week so the plant, in striving for light, doesn't become completely lopsided. Invariably, when turning Arthur's tub of dirt, I came close to getting a slipped disc. This problem too was finally solved in the kitchen, or more accurately, in the dining room. One night when we had company, Susan served a pre-dinner canapes, idly spinning the lazy Susan on which they reposed and promising the next avocado tree to our guests. I had an idea. Later that evening, enlisting my friend's help while the girls were doing dishes, we spirited away the lazy Susan and with monumental effort managed to get it placed beneath Arthur's tub. The revolving tray broke beneath the strain, but later I located a suitably sturdy version and it worked out very well. Lately, I've been thinking of motorizing the affair so the next plant that grows out of hand would turn quietly by itself at 2 RPW revolutions per week. But even without the motor, it's a real buck saver.